This story, it still feels a little surreal to tell, honestly, like something ripped straight out of a really bad low-budget movie. But it was real life. It was our life. And it all started the day we drove our beat-up moving truck into what we thought was paradise. My wife Claire and I, we'd found this place, the Preserve at Willow Creek. It sounds fancy, right? And it looked it. Manicured lawns, these perfect little colonial-style houses, kids riding bikes, the whole 9 yards. We were looking for quiet, for peace, because our lives, well, they've always been high stress. Claire works for Homeland Security Investigations. She's an analyst, a forensic accountant, the kind of person who sees patterns where everyone else sees static. And she needs downtime to balance out all the chaos she deals with. I remember pulling up to our new place, the Georgia sun filtering through the oak trees, and Claire just leaned over and whispered, "We made it, honey. No more late-night case files, just grilling and gardening." That was the dream. But you know how life is, right? The dream lasted about 45 minutes. I was wrestling with the heaviest box imaginable. It was full of my vinyl collection, naturally, when I heard it. A sharp, aggressive clip-clop on the pavement, getting closer, sounding less like walking and more like a military march. I looked up and there she was. Let's call her Brenda Thorne. She was built like a drill sergeant who exclusively ate celery sticks, clutching this massive overstuffed binder to her chest like it was the Constitution. And her eyes? They were laser-focused on our moving truck, which, yes, was parked slightly over the white line near the curb. "You're blocking vehicular access and violating the temporary parking ordinance 4B, she snapped. Not even a hello or welcome to the neighborhood. Her voice was pure steel. I was honestly dumbfounded. "Oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am. We're just unloading this last bit. Maybe 10 more minutes?" I offered, trying to be the polite new neighbor. She didn't move an inch. "I am Brenda Thorne. I am the Director of Community Integrity for this neighborhood, and I need that truck moved now. Your lack of adherence reflects poorly on the preserve." Claire stepped around the truck, wiping sweat from her brow, but her eyes were already narrowed, assessing. "Understood, Brenda. We'll move it right after this box, which contains irreplaceable assets. Where is your official HOA representative identification?" She puffed up, her eyes flicking nervously toward Claire's calm but intense gaze. "My authority is in this binder," she hissed, shaking the papers. "And you already have 2 immediate violations: unauthorized parking and unapproved use of non-regulation materials. Your moving blankets are brown, not the community-mandated light gray." I barely kept a laugh in. Brown moving blankets? This wasn't an HOA. It was a prison camp run by a woman obsessed with beige. She finally huffed off, her heels clip-clopping away, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than the box of vinyl I was holding. That was just the appetizer. The next day, we woke up to a laminated flyer taped to our mailbox, detailing fines for grass taller than 2.5 inches, specific bird feeder designs, and even a threat of litigation if our 2 outdoor non-regulation ceramic gnomes weren't removed. It was signed, "The Oversight Committee of Willow Creek." When I showed it to our next-door neighbor, a great guy named Leo Vance, he just sighed like he'd aged 5 years since breakfast. "Brenda? She's been running this neighborhood like it's her private fiefdom for years," he whispered, looking around like she might materialize from the azaleas. "Everyone just pays the fines to make her go away." But it got worse when she hired Randy. "Randy?" I asked. "Yeah, some rent-a-cop wannabe. He drives a black SUV, wears this cheap uniform, and flashes a badge he probably bought online. He likes to call himself the Ranger. He threw a $1,000 fine on my windshield last week for leaving a trash can out past 6 p.m. He's her muscle, her intimidation factor." That was the moment the dream officially died. This wasn't just a controlling neighbor. This was a calculated scam involving fraud and intimidation. And that's when Claire's HSI mode flipped on. Her eyes got that focused glint, the one I recognized when she was tracing offshore shell companies. "A fake cop carrying out fake fines based on fake rules," she murmured, already pulling up state licensing databases on her laptop. If he's carrying a firearm, he has to be licensed. If she's collecting money, she has to be registered. There's always a paper trail, honey. The next few days felt like a spy movie. Randy, the ranger, showed up, strutting down the street with a clipboard, making a theatrical show of measuring lawn heights. He was tall, bulky, and wore his uniform and service pistol like he was protecting the president. But something was off. He carried himself with an arrogance that didn't match the cheapness of his badge. Claire and I set up surveillance from the attic window. A long lens, clear view. She was logging everything. His vehicle license plate, his patrol times, and the details of his equipment. We got a clear shot of his badge. It was blurry, clearly a novelty item. More importantly, we got footage of him stopping, talking to Brenda near the mailboxes, and Brenda subtly handing him a thick white envelope, likely cash. "That's his paycheck for the protection racket," Claire noted, her finger hovering over the footage. "Now we push the envelope. Literally and figuratively. We need him to escalate, to make a clear, actionable threat that crosses the line from harassment to a felony." The opportunity came the very next afternoon. I was out front watering the new, non-regulation purple hydrangeas we'd planted purely to tick Brenda off, when Randy's black SUV pulled up hard to the curb. He slammed his door, stomped across the lawn, and his voice was low, gravelly, and furious. "You've been warned, pal. You're filming me. That's unauthorized surveillance of an active officer in the commission of his duties. That's obstruction." I just smiled, keeping my hands visible. "Officer? No one around here recognizes that uniform, Randy. And if you're so active, why are you paid in cash envelopes from Brenda Thorne?" That hit him. His face went instantly red, eyes wide with panic. He took a heavy step toward me, and that's when the situation turned genuinely chilling. He didn't just gesture. He slammed his hand onto the grip of his exposed service pistol, leaning in close, his breath smelling stale. "Listen to me, new guy. Back off the filming, or I'm going to find a reason to put you on the ground. You mess with Brenda, you mess with the preserved security." It was a clear, terrifying threat, his finger resting just above the trigger guard. He didn't draw the weapon completely, but that aggressive, heavy hand on the grip, the way he squared his shoulders, it was a definitive brandishing, a threat with immediate force. Before I could reply, Claire was suddenly standing right beside me. I hadn't even heard her walk up. Her voice was crisp and deadly calm, cutting through the tension like a scalpel. She wasn't holding a camera or a phone. She was just standing there, radiating authority. "You should really reconsider that aggressive stance, sir, and take your hand off the weapon," she instructed, her voice dropping to a tone she normally reserved for interrogating suspects. "Because I can tell you from experience, when a federal investigation starts, the first thing they look at is misuse of force and unlicensed firearms. You should probably check the fine print on that badge you're wearing."
Randy froze. He looked at Claire, then back at me, his breathing ragged. He knew instinctively that he had just crossed paths with someone who spoke a language he couldn't fake. His hand slowly, almost shakingly, lifted off the pistol grip. He stammered something about protecting the community, but the conviction was gone. And then, as if on cue, Brenda herself came sprinting down the street, her face mottled crimson. "What in the world is going on here? Randy, you two, you're finished. I'm going to hit you with every violation in this binder." Claire didn't even look at her. She kept her eyes on Randy, who was now backing away slowly, utterly defeated. "Brenda," Claire finally said, turning to her, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips, "this isn't an HOA. This is a RICO case in the making. Randy's already implicated himself in an armed threat. And I think it's time we talk to the entire neighborhood about where all those fine payments have really been going." Brenda's bravado shattered. She looked at Randy, who was already running back to his black SUV, peeling out of the neighborhood like a cartoon villain. She looked at Claire, realizing she had picked a fight with a professional investigator, and her face went paper white. It was over. right there on our front lawn among the non-regulation purple hydrangeas. The queen had just been dethroned, but the fallout was just beginning. The neighborhood exploded. Leo, our neighbor, started a text chain that was hotter than a Texas summer. Everyone had a story. $50 for a misplaced recycling bin, $200 for having the wrong color mulch. An elderly couple threatened with a lien on their house over a porch swing. It was systemic fraud run by one woman who wielded fear and a fake cop like a mace. But Brenda wasn't going down quietly. She immediately called an emergency community meeting, plastering new flyers everywhere, framing us as disruptive elements trying to ruin the sanctity of the preserve. She's trying to rally the few people who still believe her, or the ones she's still successfully intimidating, Claire observed, prepping her own materials. We had the photos, the video of Randy's aggressive brandishing, the proof of payment to Randy, and most importantly, Claire had the documents that confirmed Brenda was a complete sham. When we walked into the community center that night, the air was thick with tension. It was standing room only. Brenda was at the podium, binder clutched like a relic, her voice trembling but determined. "Friends, neighbors," she began, dripping false sincerity, "we have been under attack by people who do not respect the traditions of the preserve. They have illegally filmed our security personnel and spread vicious rumors about our finances." As soon as she finished that sentence, Claire stood up. She wasn't loud, but her voice had this carrying quality, the kind of voice that commands silence in a courtroom. "I have a question for the Director of Community Integrity. Brenda, I've conducted a thorough review of county records. Can you please inform the residents here tonight who exactly voted you into your position and on what date the Willow Creek Homeowners Association was officially reformed following its dissolution 12 years ago? The silence was instant, complete. You could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing. Brenda's mouth opened and closed like a fish. She started frantically flipping through her binder, the paper shaking violently. That's irrelevant. I was entrusted with the community records. The files are complex." Leo Vance stood up holding his phone high. "No, they're not. I spent the whole day down at the county clerk's office. The HOA officially dissolved in 2013. There are no minutes, no official counsel, and no authorized power for Brenda Thorne to collect a single cent. She has been running a criminal fraud operation for years." That was the breaking point. A roar went through the room. Neighbors started shouting their stories, their total losses, their grievances. Brenda tried to shout over them, demanding order, but her voice was a thin squeak against the wave of angry, liberated people. She looked completely lost, like a dictator whose entire army had suddenly switched sides. She finally grabbed her binder and bolted, shame and panic radiating off her as she fled the building. The next morning, the real closure arrived. A police cruiser, a legitimate one, driven by Deputy Miller, pulled up to Brenda's house, followed by 2 unmarked cars. We watched from our porch as Deputy Miller served a warrant. They found everything: stacks of cash, ledgers detailing fake fines and threats, and even a mock-up of Randy's badge application. A few hours later, Randy, the Ranger, was brought in, already handcuffed, his fake uniform looking pathetic. He'd clearly been picked up trying to leave town. And then the grand finale. Brenda Thorne herself was escorted out of her house, her hands secured behind her back, her infamous binder tucked under the arm of a detective as evidence. She was charged with multiple felonies, including fraud and grand theft. Deputy Miller stopped by our porch a few days later, giving Claire a nod that was far more respectful than any civilian usually receives. "Miss Thorne is officially detained. No bail. We've got enough evidence for a very long sentence. And Randy, well, he's singing like a canary." He paused, looking at Claire. "I saw your file on Randy, the one you forwarded with the timestamps and the HSI signature. You're good, ma'am. You're really good. You saved this community a lot of heartache and money." Claire just smiled, picking up a trowel to tend to her purple hydrangeas. Just doing my civic duty, deputy. I just hate bullies. We finally got our peace. We reclaimed our lives, and the neighborhood reclaimed its soul. We threw a massive block party a few weeks later, the first real one in over a decade, and it felt like a celebration of freedom. But here's the thing that sticks with me, the little detail that keeps me up at night. Brenda was a tyrant, yes, but why did so many people just let her do it? Why was it easier to pay a fake $50 fine than to spend 5 minutes checking a public record? It showed me how easily people surrender their power, how quickly they trade their freedom for the illusion of order. We beat Brenda, but the real enemy wasn't the fake HOA, it was the apathy that allowed her to thrive. So I'm curious, what do you think? Were the neighbors who paid the fines just victims, or did they enable Brenda's reign of terror by staying silent for so long? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about power struggles in quiet suburbia. You'd be surprised what people hide behind a perfect lawn.